Howdy folks, Noam here with Mifflin Iron and Wood Manufactory. Got my spring pole lathe all set up in my basement. I've been doing a little bit of work on it. I was able to source some green wood at the fort. We have a lot of tree of heaven, Lathe altissima, if you're familiar with it. It's an invasive species. Not only that, but it's also a host of the spotted lanternfly, another invasive species. So double nasty, and if there are any of those trees, we're only too happy to fell them and put the wood to better use than taking over native areas and playing host to nasty insects like the lanternfly. So I got a whole bunch of wood to play with now. Just cut it down the other day so it's nice, fresh, wet, which is what you want for working on a spring pole lathe. If you have power lathe, you can work pretty dry wood, going very fast with carbide tools, but for this, want it fresh and green. So there's a few steps before you can get your piece on the lathe, so I'm going to show you those. What you're going to start off with is a chunk of log, which then you have to split down into something a little bit more workable. In this case, I've already done most of my splitting work. End up with these nice quarters of ailanthus. I've been doing this work with a froe, which is a little L-shaped device, basically a blade on a handle. It's not super sharp, just enough that it can dig into the wood and split it down. I'm going to take a little chunk off this just to sort of square up these edges, and you can see how the froe works. Basically, going to pound it down and fix your wood. Now, because I wasn't right in the middle here, it's kind of veering off a little bit, and that's okay. Generally, the best way to split things is divide the center of mass, or some such terms. Basically, once you get it to how you like, start working with your axe. So, leg back towards the front of the chopping block, and always work on the bottom third or half of the wood. You don't want to get it up near where your fingers are. So, come in here, and these are stop cuts to start severing fibers, after which you come down with a hewing motion and slice everything straight off. Same thing other side. Basically, at this point, just looking to get a nice square billet. And keep on working it all the way around until you got something fairly square. If you want, you can even with the axe start knocking it into an octagon, because eventually you're going to want it round. The more you can do with coarse tools, the less you have to work with the finer tools. And this is a very coarse tool compared to what we'll be doing later on. All right, now I've got my billet fairly square. Still have a little bit of bark around the edges, but I'm not going to worry about it too much, because we are on to the next step, which is shaving down on the shave horse with the draw knife. So this wonderful little bench with its built-in clamp, foot operated, allows me to rapidly remove material, and I can still get a lot off at once, but it's a fairly controlled operation. This is a finer tool than the hatchet and lets me do a smoother cut. So instead of hacking in, I'm now shearing off. thing about this foot operated device is that I can just lift my foot, twist it around, and move the surface. I can even sort of pinch it at an angle to start getting down these sides towards an octagonal shape. I'll keep working this. I'll sort of have a skew and slice motion with the draw knife. So you have it at a slight angle, and you're slicing from one side to the other here. What that does is increases the effective angle of the blade to the wood, basically making it as if it were a sharper tool, and taking advantage of the whole blade instead of just concentrating on one area and leaving it dull. My instinct is just to kind of pull straight towards me, so I have to remember skew and slice until this starts resembling something round, which we're still a ways from right now. But this goes pretty quick. Doesn't take forever. Certainly quicker than if I tried to do all of this with the axe. It's very difficult working a very square piece on the lathe. My corners. You can already see this is something approaching cylindrical. Approaching, not there yet, but I can just sort of keep knocking off corners. Adjusting as I go until this profile here starts looking round. Funny, I've heard people say about Tree of Heaven, Lathe altissima, that they don't like the smell of the wood. They think it's kind of a stinky wood, but I don't find it to be especially offensive. Certainly an easy wood to work so far. So, despite being a nasty, invasive species, still a decent hardwood. You know, it's not white oak or rock maple or black walnut or anything, or wild cherry or anything super sought after like that, but it's serviceable. It'll do. You know? And again, better it be put to use making things than growing out in the wilds, edging out native species and hosting lanternflies. So one side is definitely looking a bit rounder than the other, and the overall profile is a bit heavy in the middle. There's a tendency to taper here, so I'm going to try to work that out a bit. is looking better. So there's still some bigger facets on this side of things, but I don't think I'm going to worry about them too much. This is a lot closer to round than that initial wedge was, so we can actually put this into the lathe and start turning it. So chopping wood on a chopping block and working it on the shave horse are all things I've been doing for a while, pretty comfortable with. This is the part I'm getting used to. This is the part I'm trying to learn. So I have my drive cord wrapped around my wooden piece. I've found the centers as best I could, kind of knocked it in. Tighten down this tailstock or puppet. So it's held between these two centers. The drive cord is wrapped around so that when I press down on my treadle, the piece spins towards me and towards the surface of my roughing gouge. There's a bit of a rhythm to this that you got to get because it cuts on this stroke, not on that. So you're getting reciprocal motion. Down, up, and you're cutting on the down. Kind of getting that straight. In fact, going slower is giving me a slightly better result here. So you start out with a roughing gouge, and it's supposed to help you bring everything down to a fairly, uniform cylinder, and then you start shaping it from there with other tools. I'm still figuring out how all this stuff works. Taking out my tool rest there. You got to make sure that your drive cord doesn't go off the edge there. And getting the treadle to stay in one place can be a little bit tricky. What I've seen Roy Underhill talk about when he demonstrates is that he gets the treadle so that the rear foot, and you want your dominant side back. So I'm right-handed, so my right hand is back here. And then controlling with the left hand. And this foot sort of anchors the back of the treadle. And the other foot just kind of glides on it. I still find it running away from me a little bit. I may add a second hinged piece so that my foot is just stepping down, holding the whole thing in place, and then this foot can step wherever it wants on the treadle and get a little more travel out of it. And yeah, just trying to find the sweet spots where the gouge will cut. So got some success here. It's actually cutting and doing something. It's going to take me a while to figure this all out. Fortunately, I know other people who do this, and there's a lot of stuff online, a lot of videos people put up about how to turn on a pole lathe. I figured out spoon carving from YouTube, basically. So I think I can manage this one too. And once I'm better at it, I'll post another video and show you how far we've gotten. Until then, I made this, you can too, trust me. If I can build this and figure out turning, any idiot can do it. So go out there and make something, be kind to each other, we'll see you next time.